There. Boom. It should be on the screen.
Okay, there we go. All right. As a follow-up to the Job question, do you think some books of the Apocrypha like Sirach or Wisdom of Solomon have some merit to be considered biblical wisdom literature? I absolutely think they have merit. I am currently, so right now, I figured people were going to ask this question. So let me just show. Right now, I've been reading every night in my Lexham English Septuagint, which I've reviewed here on the channel in our Septuagint videos. I've been reading a chapter or a couple of chapters from. I was reading Wisdom of Solomon. I finished it, and now I'm reading Ben Sira or Sirach or Ecclesiasticus. It has 3 different names. So I'll read a chapter of that every night, and then I'm also reading in the Pseudepigrapha. These are not the Apocryphal. These are 2 separate things, Apocrypha, Pseudepigrapha. I'm reading, I just today finished First Enoch. There's actually 3 books of Enoch. And I just finished First Enoch today. It's an apocalyptic book from probably around the 1st, 2nd century BC. So no group recognizes this as, actually Ethiopian Orthodox, they do recognize Enoch and Jubilees. But Roman Catholic, Greek Orthodox, they don't recognize any of the pseudepigraphical books, and Protestants don't recognize any of these. So why am I reading these? I think, one, the church has always considered them to be edifying reading in the same way that we consider Pilgrim's Progress to be, or Chronicles of Narnia to be edifying reading. The early Christians considered, and Jews before the church, even intertestamental period Jews, considered the books of what we call the Apocrypha and Pseudepigrapha. They considered them to be interesting, edifying. Some were entertainment, like more folk tales. They considered them good reading. So I think Christians should read them to acquaint ourselves with the world in which Jesus and his followers lived. When I read, I was reading, so Wisdom of Solomon. It wasn't written by Solomon, but claims to be written by Solomon, and was written long after that. But reading that, you can hear Paul echoing the same sentiments at times in Romans. Like Romans, especially Romans 1, the account of how the world kind of fell into idolatry, which then led to all of the sinfulness of the nations all around that Paul talks about in Romans 1. He's almost not quoting, but he is very much in line with what Wisdom of Solomon was talking about, an intertestamental Jewish writing that was looking at the pagan world and looking at the Hebrew scriptures and saying, how did we get from this to this? So reading that helps bring out things in when I read Romans. Reading First Enoch, there are passages in First Enoch. I'll put on this. So there are passages in First Enoch where I was reading it and I am making notes in the margin. You can't really see it, but like I'm making notes here of like, oh, this is relevant to how people read Revelation. Here's a whole thing about the Son of Man being the elect. And there's a whole section on the Son of Man as the elect of God. So these are things you don't have to say, oh, therefore this is scripture. And I certainly don't. I mean, I'm free when I'm reading some of the pseudepigraphical books to go, oh, yeah, that's clearly wrong. You know, this clearly conflicts with this thing in scripture. But that's how I do when I'm reading any theology is like, oh, yeah, I don't agree with that or disagree with that. Whereas if I was reading scripture, I don't have that freedom. I have to say, no, if this is inspired scripture, then I'm the one that's wrong or I'm reading it wrong. So I'm a big fan of Christians reading the Apocrypha. I've had David De Silva on. We have a video where we've talked all about the Apocrypha. If you haven't seen it, watch it. It's a great discussion. He's one of the world's leading Apocrypha scholars, New Testament scholars. And I'm just now reading some of this. I mean, I've read pseudepigraphical works, but like really reading it with an eye towards how does this inform my understanding of scripture. I'm a fan. I think Christians should do it as long as you don't confuse it with scripture. You don't try to build doctrine off of apocryphal or pseudepigraphical books, and you don't fall into those conspiracies of, oh, these are the hidden books. Like I have like stuff like this the lost books of the Bible. Like, this is nonsense. These are just the apocryphal or pseudepigraphical books, a collection of them bound together. This is for scholars. This is for people that are,
Yeah, I like to tell people all the time, any book that's lost and you can buy it on Amazon, it's probably not lost.
Yeah.
Probably not lost.
Yeah. So read them for what they are. And I think it's healthy. I think it's just fascinating. And especially if you're teaching the Bible, you got to know the background, and the apocryphal and pseudepigraphical books are relevant background material. Just as I think Christians should, if they're studying the Old Testament, whoa, we're about to have an accident here. As Christians are studying the Old Testament, I think they should be reading the Canaanite myths and Babylonian and Akkadian to get the cultural background. So I look at those the same way. Not the same way. I shouldn't say that. I look at those as similar, but closer to right than the Babylonian or the Akkadian stuff. All right, let's do this. We got a lot of people that want this Baylor Study Bible. So spin that wheel, Gregory.